All right, hello everybody. Today we're going to talk about cell organelles, and I'll try to make it quick. Feel free to fast forward through, so make me talk a little bit faster, although I already talk pretty fast. And make sure you have your note sheet ready to go. The note review intro to cell organelles. I can't remember the name of it exactly, but that's the idea. All right, so let's talk about different types of cells. So we're going to start. Whoops, there we go. Try that. There we go. So what exactly is a cell? I start always here in case there are some students who are coming without having had any kind of a science background, a science education. So a cell is a building block for life. Cells are incredibly small. So just like this Millhouse character, the character in the picture, he's made of all these little blocks. Cells are like little blocks. They're super small. All living things are made of one or more cells. Trying to move my image out of the way. There we go. Large plants and animals have many cells. Small ones have fewer cells. Cells can work together like cells of a muscle or something like that. You have a whole bunch of muscle cells that work together that allow your cell to flex its muscles. I'm not going to click on the cell website, but you could sometime if you want to. All right, cell theory is sort of the foundation for biology. Number one, it says all organisms are composed of one or more cells. So an organism is anything that's alive. So that could be a tiny little microscopic amoeba, it could be a human, it could be a plant, but they're all made of one or more cells. Cells are the smallest unit of life, and new cells can only come from new cells. New cells don't just arise out of nothing. That's something they used to believe a long time ago before we had science. All right, things I want you to know that are kind of vocabulary words that are going to be important. So on the right side, I have organs, the organs of the body, the lungs, the liver. Organelles, the ending L-E-L-L-E means small. So organelles are the parts of inside of a cell that do certain jobs in the same way that organs do certain jobs for our big body. Organelles do certain jobs for our tiny little cells. So we're going to be talking about organelles today. Now, the first type of cell that I just want to mention really quickly, they're called prokaryotic cells. Prokaryotic cells are bacteria, and they're really, really small. They're the very simplest form of life. They don't have any organelles. In fact, they're the same size as some of our organelles. So I'm trying to do this in front of the camera here. If our cells are this big, they're not, of course, but let's just pretend our cells are this big. A bacteria would be about this big. They're just very, very small. They do not have a nucleus, but they do have DNA. So take a look at the diagram there. All those squiggles on the inside, that's the bacteria's DNA. No other organelles that we'll talk about. All right, now there are, whoops, I feel like something jumped there. Eukaryotic cells. Eukaryotic cells is what you are made of, and eukaryotic cells are huge. Huge. Okay, anyway, they're very large cells. They have organelles, they have a nucleus, and they include some single celled organisms and all multi-celled organisms, which includes plants, by the way. So the cells down at the bottom with all those cool looking little green discs, those are plant cells. Plants are eukaryotic. Animals are eukaryotic. Humans are a type of animal, so we're eukaryotic. So anybody that has organelles, we're eukaryotic cells, and we're made of eukaryotic cells. And humans are made of about 100 trillion eukaryotic cells. That's a lot of cells. Yeah, we're made of about 100 trillion cells. All right, let's see if we can answer just a few quick questions. It says, what does a eukaryotic cell have that a prokaryotic cell is missing? So these are two diagrams. So one cell is prokaryotic, one cell is eukaryotic. Remember that eukaryotic cells are much bigger, so the pictures here imply that they're the same size. The one on the left is really supposed to be this big, and the one on the right should be really this big. Okay, so what do eukaryotic cells have that prokaryotic cells are missing? They have a nucleus and they have organelles. It says label the prokaryotic cell and the eukaryotic cell. So the prokaryotic cell is on the left, and the eukaryotic cell is the larger animal cell. And then it says which cell below is a bacteria, and I already labeled it with the word bacteria, and which one is the animal cell, and I labeled the other one the animal cell. And then finally, although they look the same size, which cell is much, much, much larger, and that would be the eukaryotic cell. To give you a sense, and this is not perfectly proportioned, but this bacteria, this prokaryotic cell, is about the same size as this little pink organelle in there. It's actually even smaller than that, but it gives you the idea. All right, moving on. You don't need to write anything down here. This is just another picture of an animal cell and all the different organelles. We're going to talk about some of these organelles. And then this is a plant cell. Plant cells actually have more organelles than animal cells do. They also have a cell wall, which makes them kind of easy to identify. Animal cells are soft and squishy. Plant cells are not. All right, let's go over the basics. Some of this should be familiar from junior high, and then we're just going to add on to what you learned in junior high. So the juice of the cell is called the cytoplasm or the cytosol. So it's the liquid that's inside, and it literally is the juice. If you're talking about apple juice, if you squash apples and you get the juice out of them, you're actually drinking the cytoplasm from inside the apple cells. The nucleus in junior high, you probably heard it called the brain of the cell. That's what holds our DNA in the form of chromosomes or chromatin. And the DNA is what determines some of our characteristics. So, what color eyes we have, what color skin we have, whether or not we get cancer, whether or not we have a genetic disorder. Within the nucleus, and it's in blue in this diagram, is something called the nucleolus. That maybe is a new word to many of you. So it's a dark spot in the nucleus. You're going to see it in some of our cell photos. And it's where ribosomes are made. Well, KJ, what's a ribosome? That's my name, KJ, if you don't know that. Ribosomes are where proteins are built. And now that may sound like really boring, like, well, who cares about proteins? But proteins are, in fact, what determine what color your eyes are, or what color your skin is, or whether or not you have cancer, or whether or not you have some genetic disorder. It's all about proteins. So the nucleolus makes the ribosomes. The ribosomes build or put together the proteins themselves. Mitochondria. And some of you in junior high learned the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Don't ever write that when you're in high school. That's a good junior high thing to learn. And now let's move on. We're big kids. So the mitochondria is where a process called cell respiration takes place. And we're going to have a whole set of notes where we talk about cell respiration. But basically, we eat and we breathe. So we eat glucose and other things, and it gets transported to the mitochondria in our cells. The mitochondria are these little things that look like beans, and they have like wiggles in the inside. Those are the mitochondria. So the oxygen and the glucose get transferred to the mitochondria, and then the mitochondria make our ATP. Our ATP is our energy. It's what allows me to flex my muscles and to talk and to think and to, do all the things that I do. We also, during cell respiration, produce a little bit of a bad thing. We produce carbon dioxide. It's like a toxic byproduct. Like nuclear power has nuclear waste. When we make our ATP, we also produce carbon dioxide. And since it's bad for us, we exhale it out. We breathe out that carbon dioxide to get rid of it. All right, and then the last thing we're going to talk about on this set of notes is the cell membrane. I'm going to show you a little bit more about the cell membrane. We're going to focus in on the cell membrane in just a second. So the cell membrane is a flexible outer membrane that controls what substances pass in and out of the cell. We're going to do a whole lab where we talk about what can and cannot enter or leave the cell. So this crazy complicated picture, that's what the cell membrane looks like if you look at it super, super close. So if you have a super powerful microscope, it's made of what are called phospholipids and proteins. So the phospholipids are these little things that look like balloons with two strings. So those are the phospholipids. And then the proteins are the giant purple beans, the big blobs in there. So it's made of phospholipids and proteins. And it's got two layers. So look at the picture. Look at how you've got balloons across the top and you've got balloons across the bottom. Those are phospholipids, but we just shorten it to lipid. Lipid bilayer. The prefix bi means two. So it's two layers of those phospholipids. So we say the cell membrane is made of a lipid bilayer. There's some really important things about the cell membrane that we need to talk about. The main function of the cell membrane is to maintain homeostasis, and that is definitely a vocabulary word that most students don't know what it means. Homeostasis, the prefix homeo means same, and the suffix stasis means same. So it basically basically means same, same. It means that the cell's job is to try to keep everything on the inside of the cell to be stable, to keep it no matter what's happening outside, no matter if the salt level outside is changing, or if the amount of water outside is changing, or if there's an acid or a base. The cell membrane's job is to keep everything the same on the inside of the cell. So the cell membrane is what we call selectively permeable or semi-permeable. What does that mean? It means small things can pass through, but big things can't. So it's got little channels that allow small things to pass through, but big things can't pass through. And we'll talk about, well, what do we do if we need something that's big inside of a cell? And we'll come to that in another set of notes. All right, now, plant cells, I mentioned at the beginning, plant cells have organelles that animal cells don't have. And there's 3 of them, and you need to know all 3 of them. The first thing that plant cells have that animal cells don't have is that cell wall on the outside. So on the inside, look at the blue diagram here. On the inside, there's like 2 boxes. There's a big one and then a little one. The one on the inside, that's the cell membrane. So plant cells have cell membranes, but then on the outside, they have this rigid cell wall. They have the cell wall. It's the outside covering, and it supports and protects the cell. They have that because of all the weird things. They don't have a skeleton. Plants don't have a skeleton. Our cells are soft and squishy. So how is it that we can stand upright? Because we have a skeleton. Plant cells don't have a skeleton, so they have these really rigid cell walls that allows them to stand upright. All right, they also have this big swimming pool in the middle, that light blue area. That's the vacuole. It's filled with water. It can have other things in it too, but primarily it's full of water. Animal cells can have vacuoles. We do have vacuoles, but they're much smaller, and there's usually like several of them. We don't have this giant central vacuole that plants have. And then finally, this is what makes plants look green. They have chloroplasts. And in the diagram, those are those little green discs. So it's where photosynthesis happens. And you guys, photosynthesis is incredibly important. Photosynthesis is how plants take sunlight and they remove carbon dioxide from the air. And that's good because carbon dioxide is what's causing global warming. It's heating up our planet. So plants are vacuuming the sky for us. Thank you, plants. And then they're taking that carbon dioxide and they're actually turning it into sugar. What? That's so cool. So they're taking gas out of the air and they're turning it into sugar. Thank you, plants. So we use that sugar for our food. All food on this planet comes from plants doing photosynthesis. Even if you're eating a big juicy hamburger, that came from a cow. Where did a cow get its food? From eating plants. Cows eat grass, so that grass photosynthesized, made sugars and other things. It's not just sugar. The cow ate it, turned it into its body mass, and now we eat the cow and we get food from that cow. So it's all connected. We're completely dependent on plants. In addition, as they make their sugars, as they make their other carbohydrates, plants also release oxygen into the air, and that allows us to breathe. Oh my goodness. Love plants, right? Even if you don't really like plants, you should love plants. They take care of this planet, and we're super dependent on them. All right, is that the last one? I thought there was one more. I'm sorry. I noticed what's going on here. I'm labeling this plant cell now. So the cell wall's on the outside, chloroplast there, and vacuole there. All right, the last thing is just a little quiz yourself. See what you can do. It says try to label from memory every organelle in this plant cell, and you can just use the letters. So find the cell membrane and label it A. Find the cell wall and label that B. Find the central vacuole, that's the swimming pool. Label that C. Find the chloroplast and one of the chloroplasts and label them D. They're the green things, although they might look green on your paper. Find the nucleolus and label that. That's the dot in the nucleus. Find the nucleus. Got all our DNA in it, or the plant's DNA. Plants have DNA. And then find the mitochondria. Yes, plants have mitochondria and chloroplasts. We have mitochondria. We don't have chloroplasts because we can't do photosynthesis. All right, we're going to watch that inner life of a cell video later. We're not going to do that right now. You guys are all done. Have a great day.